Buying and selling businesses is also business. Part 2. Buying a business. 6 key questions from the posts of Dr. Strive Masiyiwa. A good entrepreneur must never be too sentimental towards a business. There is a time to buy, a time to sell, and even a time to close a business. It's all business, and in a successful business career, you must have the capacity to do all three. In the first part of this series, I introduce you to the subject of buying or selling businesses. As an entrepreneur, you need to be aware that buying or selling a business is also part of business. Let's look first at the subject of buying a business. You must always be very clear why you want to buy a business. Many people buy businesses filled with emotions, yet with very little analytical work to justify their decision. A friend of mine with a great job once came to me very excited that someone he knew was planning to sell his business, and he wanted to buy it. And as often happens in such situations, he wanted me to help him fund it. Having listened to him quietly, I asked a simple question. Why do you want to buy a business? I have always wanted to get into business, he began. So, why have you taken this long? I asked, adding, after all these years, you could have already started something of your own. So why now? I wasn't asking these questions just to be difficult. I wanted to see if he was an entrepreneur or just someone hoping to make himself more wealthy. After we had discussed for a while, I asked him, tell me what you are going to do with this business once you acquire it. Whether you are buying a business for the first time or you are a giant multinational buying a business, these same questions always apply. 1. What is the motive behind your decision to buy a business? 2. What will you do with it to grow and expand it once you have acquired it? 3. Do you have the capacity to run and develop the business that you are planning to buy? 4. What will you pay for it, and how did you reach that price? 5. How are you going to pay for it? 6. What are the challenges and risks you will face that are outside your control? When buying Newatel South Africa, we had to answer each of these questions methodically and dispassionately, sometimes bringing it outside parties to test our answers to each question. These are principles you must write down carefully. Many books are also written on the subject. Believe me, I have read books and articles on acquisitions over the years, including those that failed spectacularly. In a big company like Liquid, management must convince both the board and the investors. Then, of course, there are the banks, and in this case, there were lots and lots of banks. Going back to the story of my friend, I'm always skeptical about people who try to get into business by buying a business unless they happen to be managers of the business they are trying to buy. In most instances, when people opportunistically try to buy a business that's on offer, it ends up badly. It either ends up struggling to keep its original glory, or they simply go out of business. Most big businesses are not opportunistic buyers. They know exactly what they are looking for, and they have usually been watching the business they propose to buy for quite a long time. Every week we are offered businesses to buy. I always apply the 6 rules I have listed above. Once I can tick off the boxes on most, if not all, of those questions in a methodical and dispassionate way, we can begin to look at it. Otherwise, I say thank you and move on. Lucy asks, my question is, sir, when buying a business, is necessary to continue with the original? I was thinking that you can change the business to what you want. My reply, if you use your own money to buy the business, Lucy, you can do whatever you want. However, if you are going to borrow money or to ask investors to put up the money, then your room to make those kind of chances is based on what you tell them you are going to do with their money. You can come to me and ask me to help you buy a bakery, and then you turn it into a butchery. It might not be too happy, particularly if you are a baker by training. India asks, sir, I understand why you bought Newatel South Africa, but I want to understand why Tata sold it. Because I am an Indian exploring possibility of expand our aviation business in Africa, especially in Nigeria. After studying Africa, I understand one thing, that African people are very kind and intelligent, so we have better chance of business with association with them. But little scared that acceptance of Indian are less or what, because Tata generally not sell their business. They are Indian leading business house in India. My reply, the reasons companies decide to sell or buy a business are valid and complex. I cannot speak for Tata's reasons, but I agree with you that Tata is one of the most successful and sophisticated businesses in the world today. Absolutely world class. When I myself decide to sell a business, for instance, it might be because it is not performing to my requirements, or it might be because I want to fund another business which I consider more promising. Sometimes it is because I don't think I am the best owner to get the best from the business and to grow it to its best potential. What if their reason of selling the business is as a result of environmental factors that will necessarily affect the company's performance negatively when you buy it? How will you deal with such a situation? My reply, don't look at someone's reasons for selling as a negative thing. Buying and selling of businesses is going on all the time. It is part of a good business. It is rather like buying and selling players in soccer. It's part of the game. I introduced this subject because I realized many young entrepreneurs don't always appreciate this fact of business. Companies like Microsoft and Google are buying scores of companies every year, and those who sell to them are very excited to sell to them too. It is business and it is good. Kayonde asks, in a business, is it necessary that you possess knowledge about the business? For instance, when considering buying a tech company and you are a professional lawyer, you don't know about tax, but you see a business as a very promising and healthy one. Can one still go on with the acquisition? My reply, if it is your money that you are using to buy the business, it is always up to you how you use your money. However, if you go to a bank to borrow money or approach investors, you are most likely going to be turned down. Personally, it would be virtually impossible to persuade me to either lend money or invest in such a situation. At best, I would ask you to use your own money and come back to me after a year or more, so I can first assess what you have done with the business. It might sound harsh, but that is reality. No one likes to put their money to such an obvious risk. These are the rules of the game. It's like buying a goalkeeper, hoping to turn him into a striker. Lawal asks, "Thanks as always, Doctor. But is buying a business really better than starting one from the scratch?" Senior 4A, Nigeria. My reply, personally, I always prefer the option to start a business from scratch. Certainly, if you are just starting out in business, I highly recommend that you start something of your own first. I normally sanction buying as a strategy of growing a business that we already own, or as a means to strengthen our position in a particular area of business that we are involved in. In our case study, Nowatel South Africa, we were already the biggest player in the industry across Africa. We had a presence in South Africa, but it was not strong enough. So that was a way to grow an existing business and our market share. Marcus asks, "Thanks, Doctor. Is it mandatory for the seller to furnish the buyer with all information concerning the business, or it is bought on how its basis?" My reply, this is actually a very good question. Before you buy a business from someone, you must make sure you read up as much as possible on the professional process and the procedures. For buying businesses, any good corporate lawyer and a professional accountant should know that there is a very precise process to be followed in buying and selling a business. If you follow this process, the chances of getting a bad surprise diminish considerably. To give you an example, in an answer to your question, the buyer asks the seller to set up what is called a data room, where all corporate documents, contracts, agreements, and financial records of the company are kept. We call this the disclosure process. And if the seller is not willing to make all necessary disclosures, we walk away. No matter how good the deal, the same process applies if you want to sell a stake in your business to an investor to raise more money. It is therefore extremely important for any entrepreneur to understand this process and how it works. This is senior class stuff for guys like you.